Hello and welcome to the Marina Skua podcast. My name's Marina and I'm a knitwear designer and yarn dyer based in the southwest of England. Now it's been a few weeks since I filmed a little Hello I'm Back video, so I've had a little bit of time to start getting back into the swing of things. I'm hopefully going to be filming podcast episodes regularly from now on. You'll notice I've got a different background. I am trying to find a spot in the house where it's comfortable and nice to film. And so over the next few episodes I might be changing it up a bit just to see how things go. But yeah, I'm going to be showing you in this episode a few of the things that I've been working on since I last did a proper episode, because I've done a fair bit of knitting off and on. I don't have everything to show you because I've made some gifts and things, and so I won't be showing you those, but the things that I do have I will show you quickly. Some of them are designs, some of them are quick little projects for the baby. Just a note, I'm not going to talk loads about the baby because I like to keep personal stuff personal generally, but thank you very much to everyone who's sent well wishes and been really kind and lovely, and it was so nice to hear on my last little video how many of you are glad that I'm back, and it just felt really welcome, so thank you everyone. So yeah, I will start showing you some things. So the first up are these socks here, which I released last week. If you were watching the podcast before I went on leave, you will have seen these in progress ages and ages and ages ago. Socks take me forever to knit. I don't know what it is. There's something about the tiny stitches and the tight tension you need for them. I like to knit. I generally knit at quite a comfortable tension, so not too tight, not too loose. I do a few things to manage my tension, which I might talk about in a little bit. But with socks, I like to knit as tightly as I possibly can, so I will usually use a needle size that's quite a few sizes smaller than I would for a garment, for example, in the same yarn, because that gives a really nice dense fabric, and it's going to give you much longer lasting socks because they get a lot of wear and tear, and I much prefer using yarn that doesn't have any nylon or anything in it. So these ones are the Cordage socks. I did finish them quite a while ago, back in the spring, and I have been wearing them. I have washed them especially for you. I also don't wash my wool socks like with every wear, because wool has a lot of great properties that means that it doesn't really harbour microbes and things, and it tends to not get nearly as smelly as other fibres. So you can make your wool things last longer by washing them less frequently. Obviously, if they get actually dirty or smelly, then wash them, but yeah. So these have a really nice stitch pattern. I found it quite difficult to describe the stitch pattern because it's sort of intertwining knits and purls, and it's well, one that I designed myself, and it's not a cabled pattern, even though it sort of looks like it might be cables. I've done it with travelling stitches, which is quite fun, especially if you don't actually like doing cables. I like doing cables a lot more now that I've been doing them without a cable needle and doing them properly, because it took, again, if you have watched before, you will know that I often assume I know how to do things and think that the method that everyone uses is stupid, and then realise that I'm not using the correct method, and then when I actually do it, it's like, right, this is why everyone makes a fuss about this, because it's actually good. However, these are not cables, and so they're just travelling stitches, which is nice if you don't like working cables. So you've just got a nice panel of these stitches coming up the front of the sock. They're worked toe up, which I like because this, I used a single skein of yarn, and I just went all the way up. I judged roughly how much I was going to need for the ribbing, and then I just kept doing the ribbing until I had what I suspected to be about the right amount to do the bind off. And so you're able to do basically every last bit of the yarn. So the yarn I used is Annabelle Williams Romney Pure Sock. This colourway is Green Grass, I believe. At the moment, this yarn is in Annabelle's shop only as the undyed yarn. I do really recommend it. It's a beautiful yarn. It's got a nice high twist on it. It's Romney, which is a breed that has quite a long staple length, so it makes a really nice strong sock yarn. I really enjoyed knitting with it, despite not massively enjoying knitting socks in general, but it was a really nice yarn to work with, and it's naturally dyed, and the colour has held up really well, which is nice because some natural dyes can fade quite quickly. But I've been wearing these a fair bit out on walks and around the house and things, because it's not particularly warm in here. And I'm really impressed with how they're holding up. There's, you know, some sign of wear on the sole, but not loads. And they don't look in any risk of wearing out at any point soon. So very pleased with the yarn. And I don't remember if I actually mentioned the name of the pattern. They're the Cordage socks. And if you have watched previously, you might have seen me making cordage, which is twisting up plant fibres to make like twine. And it's something that I often like to do out on walks, and something about the intertwining stitches and the colour of the yarn really made me think of that. And so yes, these are now on my website and on Ravelry. The pattern's available there. And if you want dyed colours and you want to substitute the yarn, I think Emma Woolly Mammoth Fibres, her Hearth sock looks like it's a very similar spec. So you should be able to knit it up to the same gauge and everything and follow the pattern as written. And she's got some beautiful naturally dyed colours as well. So yes, is there anything else I need to tell you? It's a Flegel heel. I always forget to talk about the heel type. It's a Flegel heel, which is my very favourite type of heel. I don't think I will do a different type of heel because I just love how it works so much. It sort of has both the advantages of a short row heel and a flap and gusset heel without the disadvantages of each of those. So you have sort of a bit of a gusset, which gives you a bit more room around the heel and on the top of the foot, but then you've got a sort of wedge-shaped section at the back instead of a square flap as you would with a flap and gusset. And I think it looks much neater and nicer, and for me it's a really comfortable fit, and obviously people's feet are different shapes and sizes, and so some styles of heel suit some people more than others. But if you've not tried it before, I really recommend giving it a go. And the way I write sock patterns, I do them for using Magic Loop. So I write the instructions for the top of the foot and the bottom of the foot, which then becomes the front of the leg and the back of the leg. And that means it's really easy to adapt it to working 2 socks at a time if you are that way inclined. That's the way I do it because, well, I've literally never made one sock and then made the second sock. I just know that I would never do it. So I do everything 2 at a time as much as possible. So the instructions as written, they aren't written for 2 at a time, but if you are that way inclined, it's very easy to do them that way. So yes, if you want to know anything more about the Cordage socks, then add a comment here. But otherwise the pattern is available. That is those ones there. Now, what to show you next? I think I will go with things that are finished. I'll now show you this, which is Making Stories issue 8. I have been involved with Making Stories magazine for a very long time. For a good while I was their tech editor, and I'm no longer their tech editor. My lovely friend Jess is editing for them now. I'm not doing any tech editing work. I need to keep reiterating because I know that tech editors are in short supply. Yeah, not doing any tech editing work, at least at the moment. We'll see how it goes. If I can get away with not tech editing for the foreseeable future, that would be great. But I've loved working with Making Stories for ages and ages. It's a great magazine, and in this one I have an illustration which is really fun. So the theme of the magazine is campfire. So it's really lovely and cozy. There are lots of beautiful autumnal colours, and it's all totally my colours. It really is. And my illustration is right here at the front, and I'm really pleased with how it looks in the magazine, and the fact that it's literally, when you get in there, it's just right there. And so I've been a little bit shy about my illustration work. Well, I say work, I haven't really done it as work much. I've done all of my own branding and everything, so if you've bought any of my yarn, the little sheep or the alpaca on my labels and my logo and everything are ones I've drawn myself. But over the next few weeks and months, I think I'm going to try doing a little bit more sort of knitting and atmospheric based illustration. So with this one, I've got a person sitting with their back to the viewer with a nice campfire by the lake, and I think I'd like to do some more of that style in illustration, sort of a person in a landscape wearing knitwear. And whether I do that as just something personal to practice my drawing, or whether they turn out to be something that maybe I could sell prints or postcards of. I'd love to hear if that's something that anyone would be interested in, because I love drawing and always have done, but I've gone through phases of not really practicing as much as I could. But yes, I'd like to hear what you'd think about that. So yes, that's my illustration in Making Stories. I highly recommend you go and check out all of the patterns because they're really, really beautiful. There are some very interesting constructions in there and some lovely stitch patterns, and it's just a beautiful issue. Now, next one up is this one. This is something that I have only finished within the last couple of days, and I'm very excited about it. It's a waistcoat, sleeveless cardigan situation. As you can see, we've got some nice details down the side. We've got a little panel of moss stitch, and then some cables, and then the cables carry on round the armholes. And we've got that same thing reflected on the front band. So you've got the moss stitch there, and then half a cable here. And so all of the edging is moss stitch rather than ribbing. And I'm really, really, really pleased with how it's turned out. And so this is a design that I've just sent off to my tech editor, so I'm going to be opening it up for test knitting soon. So if you are interested in test knitting, I'll put the link in the box below, and you can sign up there and you will receive an email when I open a new test knit, and from there you'll be able to apply to join the test knit if you are so inclined. And that is a list that's separate to my standard newsletter. So my newsletter, I have all product updates, when I have a new pattern out, when I update the shop with more yarn, you know, what's going on with all of my everything. So there's the newsletter for that, and then a specific test knitting list, which is only for people who are interested in test knitting for me. And if you have any questions about test knitting and what it involves, please either add a comment below or send me a message. You can send me an email via my website. Always happy to answer anything you might want to ask there. And so, yeah, the magical thing about this is the yarn. I mean, you can see the colour very much goes with my living room as it is currently. So the yarn is Appledore DK by John Arbon, and it's a yarn that's inspired by apples and local varieties of apples here in the southwest of England, some of which have some hilarious names. And the yarn really has all of the sort of honesty and crunchiness that you'd expect of a yarn inspired by apples. So I wouldn't say it's super soft. It's fairly rustic feeling. There are little kempy bits which give quite a nice sort of fuzzy halo, and it's really interesting because it's very, very tweedy in the sense that it's lots of colours blended together. So this one, as far as I can tell, has a fair bit of sort of tealy turquoise with a lot of yellow and some bright pink. And honestly, from a distance, it's quite hard to work out what colour it actually is. Like, sometimes it looks teal, sometimes it looks brown. It really depends on the light. And John Arbon, I've admired their yarn for a long time. And their approach to blending colours in yarn has inspired some of my own spinning for some of my own personal projects. And the way that they blend together colours that would seem horribly clashy together to create something really quite deep and subtle and beautiful. And so this, you know, it's got these really bright colours that blend together, and from close up they almost look like sort of oil on a puddle with that little rainbow iridescence. But from a distance, it's just this really nice, deep colour that will go with most of my wardrobe. So if I chuck it on quickly, I can show you how we're looking. Yeah. Obviously not the ideal outfit for it. So here we go. You can see we've got sleeveless cardigan, got a nice V-neck, comes out to the point of the shoulder, and it's graded for quite a big range of sizes, so the fit will obviously depend on the size that you make. I've got it at a nice sort of low hip length here, which will be really nice for layering up as the weather's getting chillier. I've written it for, where's my button? There we go. I've written it for 6 buttons, although currently I only have 5 on here because I've taken the buttons off something else that they weren't really suitable for, and I only had 5 of them. So I've got more on the way for the last bottom one there. Honestly, I don't think I'd ever do up the bottom one anyway. But I've written it for 6 buttonholes, but you can do more if you wanted to go for a sort of tunic length thing, or you can do fewer if you wanted to do a nice sort of high hipped or crop length. I think it's a really versatile pattern that is going to be really nice once it's out in the world. So that one will be coming out in a few months' time once I've had it tech edited. It's currently with my tech editor, and then I'll be sending it out to test knitters in the next few weeks. And then once it is test knitted, it will be going out in the world. And if you are interested in test knitting, John Arbon are going to be offering a little bit of a discount if you want to use the Appledore yarn for the test knit. Which is very nice of them, and I highly recommend trying the yarn because it's wonderful. Oh, I didn't mention the colour that I've used is called Dufflin, after I've raved about the colour. Should probably tell you which one it is. So now I've just got a few little baby items to show you, because I've really been enjoying making them, just because they're so small and quick and nice and easy, and I can use little bits of leftover yarn from other projects. So this one is the Chutes and Ladders hat by Aino Birkinbayeva. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's fun to say, but Aino does really, really lovely patterns, and she's got quite a few sweet little baby things, as well as some beautifully constructed garments and quite interesting graphic details. This one I just wanted a hat with ear flaps and ties, because for pram walks it helps it stay on the actual baby head. So I'm trying to remember with this one, because I did make it quite a while ago. I think I added the extra length at the back, so I did a little bit more across the back, just to get a little bit more warmth across the back of the neck, the back of the head. And this one isn't going to fit for that much longer, but we're still wearing it at the moment. So that's Chutes and Ladders. This one does not fit anymore. And again, this was two different yarns that I just had little scraps left of that I held together. This is the Barley hat by Tin Can Knits. So it's just got a nice little garter stitch section here. It's a nice little beanie. And it was great very early on, but then rapidly started just rising up off the head and would always fall off, which is why I made the other one. And then this is a very recent one. I only finished these last night. I have a bag of very, very, very sad wool socks. I love wool socks. I have a large collection of wool socks that my mother has brought me from South America and that I've bought myself in South America. They tend to be ones that are knitted for tourists from alpaca yarn. And, you know, everyone has to make a living. But they are definitely, let's see how quickly we can knit these socks and make them look nice for tourists so they buy them, but not actually have them be very good socks. So they're generally at quite loose gauge in alpaca yarn that can be very soft, or wool that's got quite short fibres. And so I've worn through a lot of pairs of them over the years and darned and darned and darned them. And it does get to the point where they're not really worth darning anymore. So I have a bag of those, and I keep saying that I'm going to do something with them. And I finally did, because we do an evening walk with the baby before we put him to bed. And as it's getting chilly, in the carrier, his little trousers ride up, and then his ankles are all exposed, and there's that gap between the booties and the trousers, and it's not okay. I don't want him to have cold ankles. So I chopped off the feet of some of the dead socks, and these, just use them as leg warmers. I just pull them on over the top. They go over the top of the trousers, and just kind of cover that gap between trouser and bootie. And I've just, where I've cut the edge off, the first time we just needed them before we went, so I just literally put it straight on him. These they're quite felted, so they don't fray too much. But on the inside there, it's really not my best work, but I've just done a little bit of blanket stitch around the edge just to lock those stitches to make sure they don't unravel. And then I've top stitched it down using some scrap yarn and a chain stitch, which is a bit decorative. It looks nice, and the chain stitch is also a little bit stretchy, rather than a back stitch or a running stitch or something. So that just has that little bit of stretch there. So that was the legs of the socks, and then from the tops of the socks where the fabric wasn't worn out, I made some very quick and terrible little mittens. Really not good work, but I am just trying to do things as quickly as possible to make them functional at the moment, because my goodness. And again, I've blanket stitched the seam on the inside and the edge here, and then folded it back, done a little bit of top stitching, and used the same yarn just for a little tie thing, just to keep the mittens together. So those will go through the sleeves of his little jacket so they don't get lost. So that is those, and I mean, if you want to see the state that the socks were in, I've got the chopped off bits here, and I mean, we've got whole loads of, because I did visible mending on these ones, so I've just used whatever scrap yarn I had. So it's all in quite bright colours, and it's, yeah, they were not in good shape. So I just cut away all the bits that were not usable and too worn through and darned and messy. That is all wool, so that will just go straight on the compost pile, and next summer we'll mulch our veggies. A lot of people have asked me if I have a garden here. We're very, very lucky. We've got a nice little front garden that is going to be very pretty once I have actually had some time to properly plant it up and everything. At the moment it's got some of my plants from the old house because I had to do some very last minute digging with a very small baby just before we moved, which was not the plan, but I managed to rescue a lot of our plants, so we've got those out there, which is nice. And we'll be working on the front garden, and then we do have a back garden which is a whole mess at the moment, but eventually there we'll be doing our veggie growing and everything. And so yes, I'll be showing a bit more of the garden as I begin to do things with it once things are a bit more sorted. So one final thing I'm going to show you in this episode is what I'm currently knitting on. I've been sort of alternating working on this one and the John Arbon waistcoat. And they're both worsted spun yarns by, you know, British yarn companies, but very, very different yarns. So this one is, oh, it's a little bit crumpled because I've had it in my project bag. This one is Garth Enor Beacons in a lovely colour called Wild Olive. It's a really, really nice green. It's one of my favourite colours, just a nice, slightly sludgy green. I generally, when I use the term sludgy to describe colours, I pretty much always mean it as a compliment. Years ago, some of my knitting friends described my taste in colours as jewel tones dipped in mud, which I think probably covers it fairly decently. Sort of rich but low saturation. Yeah. Anyway, I love this colour. Wild Olive. The yarn is called Beacons, which is a DK weight. It's very, very soft. It is a blend of Polworth and Romney. And it just has beautiful stitch definition. So this design has ribbing down the sides and then these columns of faux cables. And I'm currently, where are we? I'm currently working on the back, so it goes this way round. And so it's going to be a jumper. I'm working bottom up. And this pattern is called Woodbind. It's one that was actually already published in Knit Now magazine back at the beginning of the year. Might even have been the end of last year. Anyhow, not particularly interesting. So it was published in a magazine, and the yarn that the original sample was knitted in isn't one that I was particularly happy with. I don't think it showed off the design particularly well, and it's not a yarn that I would choose to use just because of my personal taste in yarn. So I wanted to re-knit it in a yarn that I thought that was really, really going to suit the pattern. So we've got something with really nice stitch definition that shows off just these little panels down the side really nicely. And yeah, so it's a really enjoyable knit. It's sort of mostly stockinette with some ribbing and the little twisty details. And again, I'm going to be working on this sample until the sample is finished, and then I will photograph this to publish the pattern myself as an individual pattern rather than with the purchase of the magazine. So yes, this is, well, it's just a really enjoyable knit. I'm liking working with DK weight yarn at the moment. It is a weight that I really enjoy, just because it feels like it goes quite speedily without it, without requiring sort of quite big hand movements to move around a heavier yarn. Having said that, I am dreaming of a massive cabled Aran weight cardigan. I think that would be amazing. But I have quite the design queue and quite a few things to work through, so I'll be working on this one, and again I'll be publishing this one at some point in the future. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be keeping you updated both on here and on social media, and if you are interested in when my patterns come out and when I have new yarns out and things, please do subscribe to my newsletter. It is by far the best place to find out what things are happening and what I'm up to, if you actually want to make sure that you keep up with things, because the podcast episodes are somewhat infrequent and social media, especially Instagram, is very, very unreliable. So yes, there's a link for my newsletter down below, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've got through a little bit of a backlog of projects that I've been working on, and so next time I'll be showing you probably fewer projects, but maybe in a bit more detail. And if you want more content from me in between episodes, I do exclusive videos on Patreon, and the support on Patreon is really what helps keep everything going here. It's really, really appreciated, and we've got a lovely little community there. We've got our monthly Zoom calls, which are just really relaxing and fun. They're usually on a weekend, afternoon, early evening UK time, which usually works out for different time zones. I can't get all of them in, but it generally works for as many as I can. And we've got a nice little Discord group where we can keep up with people's projects and see what people are working on and ask for advice and yeah, just offer a little bit of support to each other. So if you're at all interested, there's a link to Patreon below. Take a look at some of the benefits and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions. And so until next time, bye bye.